you had this conversation with Trey Williams recently, and it was fascinating because it speaks to what Ryan and I are doing, entrepreneurship, and it speaks to the business and FAs. FAs are all entrepreneurs, right? So I really took a lot from that conversation. But one thing that stood out was the word unlearn. And you guys talked in depth about unlearning behavior to unlock future growth and future more positive behaviors. And I wonder, like, as the human attention graph shifts, as the things that we're more interested as humans, especially COVID has fast forwarded this thing like exponentially, which I'm sure you have some thoughts on, but we want to consume things in a different manner. We want to do things in a different manner. We want to make connections differently. How do advisors unlearn some of the behaviors they have been taught, we've all been taught over the last 15 or 20 years out of the jump? Like what are some steps that we can take? Because let me put something even more granular on it. Well, when seminars return, my business will be back to where it was in 2019. Maybe. We don't know, like, but so how do we unlearn some of that stuff?
Yeah. So, the way that I think about it, which I mean, this, I said on the podcast, I want to write a book about this one day because
Yes.
I'm so fascinated by it. And I haven't written the book yet. So I don't claim
It's
to
going to
be
be called Unlearning. I made a note of it.
right. I don't claim to be an expert yet, but I think about it the same way that, in sort of the same way of this Cartesian principle of I think, therefore I am, right? He took everything he thought he knew and he deconstructed it until he could find the one thing that he knew to be, indubitably true. And I think that's what we have to do with our experience and some of the business lessons we've learned. Wall Street and the finance business is like terrible for these kind of like folksy aphorisms and this little like down home humor and things, these little mantras that we have that I'm not even sure if they work. And so I think what we have to do is start to question everything and ask ourselves, how is that working for me? How is that working for me, both from a business perspective and for me as a human being who's trying to grow and be better day after day. So I think we have to question everything. And if you find yourself starting to get defensive about questioning something, or you find yourself being reluctant to question something, that's probably a good indicator that you've poked a sore spot and that it needs double the amount of questioning. So I really think it takes making a list of everything you do in a given day and breaking it down and deconstructing it and say, how is it working for me? Another very simple thing that I do is I try and, I do this sort of compare and contrast thing. If you ask me, like, what are my values, right? I would say, things like, being a great husband and father, right? Like being someone who's always learning, all these things. And work, candidly, would kind of be down the list. Like being, my job would be kind of lower on the list than some of the personal stuff. But if you look at how I spend my time, like there's a massive imbalance. Like I don't spend a whole lot of, I spend a lot more time working than I do being a great husband and father. And so I think we have to not buy our own nonsense sometimes. We have to look for discrepancies in our own lives and not buy into this bill of goods that we're selling ourselves all the time. We all have this drive to think of ourselves as above average, with respect to our talent and our intellect and all these things, and also above average with respect to our morality or goodness. And neither of those things is necessarily true. And until we sort of do the self-examination to determine how we can get better in both respects, nothing happens. So I think you have to sort of boldly break apart your life, question your own nonsense, and look for the discrepancies between who you say you are and who your time says you are.